So, Brad, if you have a hungry leader and you want to give them some responsibility, what role does that play in their development? How important is giving responsibility to a rising leader, and then how can you ensure that you do it in such a way that they don't fail?
Yeah. Well, my rule on empowering is really simple. Empower. Period. If you think they have potential and you think they can handle it, give it to them. Especially a younger leader, especially a rising, young, emerging leader. Because one, if you don't, they're going to go somewhere else. If they're ambitious, if they're hungry, if they're wanting to innovate, risk, and push, if you don't give them more than they can handle, they're going to leave, or they'll find somewhere else to go, or they'll be bored, or,
start a new business.
Yeah,
on the side.
Or they'll have these side things that are happening that distract them. So your rule should be, I'm giving them more than they can handle. I'm giving them more than they actually should be able to take on at this point in their career, and I'm probably going to watch them fail at some point in the near future. Now that's really hard for people because they feel responsible as a leader, and you go, well, I don't want to give them too much. I don't think you can give them too much. Again, if they're leaning in and their posture is, piled on, then liberally give them as much responsibility as they can take. Now here's where leaders mess up, especially older leaders to younger leaders, is they give them responsibility, but they don't give them authority, right?
Yeah.
So I'll give you 97 tasks that are basically making my to-do list way shorter. But with those tasks, you have no authority to be able to do anything without my approval. This is totally just hamstringing a young leader. You have to give them responsibility, and as much as you can, give them authority. Now that's where the smart piece comes in. You don't want to be stupid about it. So don't give them all this responsibility and then say, well, I know you're 23, but I'm just going to, Brad said to give you authority, so you're in charge. And then they miserably fail, and you go, well, I was trying to empower them.
Yeah.
There's a smart level, and that has to be figured out, whatever we're talking about, whatever the context is. But as much as you can, fill their plate up with responsibility and authority, and give them tasks, but also give them the ability to make the decisions within that task or within that project. And that will empower them, and they will walk away going, I'm scared to death. I am so scared right now that I'm going to fail. You know what that does? If they're the right kind of person on your team, it elevates their game. And they will figure it out. They'll do research. They'll go talk to people, and all of a sudden you've said to them, I trust you. Even if you don't know how to do this, you'll get it done.
What's interesting though to me is when I find I'm like a personality profiler. I'm one of those guys.
Yeah.
And so I love an INTJ on a Myers-Briggs, which is like super responsible, so amazingly responsible. And I have a couple of those guys.
I'm ENTJ.
I'm an ENTP.
We're close.
We're very close. I have J tendencies.
My J beats your P every time.
It does.
I'm trying to think of a good Myers-Briggs joke, but I can't. I couldn't pull one up then.
Anyway, I would say when you have someone that is very responsible, that they just take, they are going to, they're tying their self-worth to whether or not they can complete something. I personally think it's vitally important to say, I expect to clean up a mess once a month. I expect you to be pushing it so hard that I'm expecting you not to fail, but that you're going to push the boundaries. I'm empowering you to push the boundaries so much that I'm going to have to come alongside and clean things up a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I feel like if you don't, they're never really going to get to that.
Yeah, you want people to feel both the pressure of I'm overwhelmed and I'm over my head. I'm trying to do something that is beyond my capacity and my capability and my wisdom and my experience at this point in my career. But I think that's the piece that will keep them motivated and hungry, and it'll keep them aware of their shortcomings. As soon as somebody gets bored and they get to the point where they feel like that you're now not stretching them, that's again when people start looking around and they start going elsewhere. And and failure for failure's sake is the worst kind of corporate culture or organization culture. Failure because you're risking and you're innovating.
Absolutely.
And you're going for it. That's needed. That's a requirement. But to people say, well, we failed and we take pride in that. And the reality is that everybody failed because they're incompetent. That's a problem. Like we got to deal with that issue.
Yes.
And you can't take pride in that. But failure because you said, hey, we're going to go take that mountain, but we just fell short of climbing 30,000 feet. We climbed 27. We can handle that. We can deal with that kind of failure. So you have to understand the kind of failure that you're willing to put up with, and not only put up with, you're actually willing to reward, because there's a huge difference between those two chasms. And most leaders, they look at failure across the board and go, I either will totally embrace it, or I'll totally reject it. Mm-hmm. And your job is to push and again empower, overwhelm them, like you said, Todd, to the point where you go, you know what? At some point, probably this month, I'm going to have to deal with some things that they're not going to be real proud of. And that's the kind of, again, culture that you feel like you're stretching people. You feel like you're pushing them beyond their capabilities. And I'll tell you who's great at this kind of conversation is sports teams. Sports teams are really good at taking a rookie in the NFL, for example, and saying, all right, you ready? Get out there. Go run the offense, rookie quarterback. We're going to put all of our eggs in your basket. And nobody sits around and goes, well, they're not ready. I mean, they may fail, but if there's no sense from the organization that is the NFL team that says, well, we need to, they're only 22, we need to let them wait. We shouldn't pile on anything to them. If they're ready, put them in. Put them in. Let them go after it. But sometimes in organizational life, we tend to equate youth or lack of experience with a lack of ability to get things done. And I think it's just, in many ways today, it's just the opposite. Young leaders today have more wisdom than old leaders. Now, let me define wisdom there, because people will go, "Oh no, there's no way, Brad." They have more abilities to go get the answer. A 23-year-old can go find the answer on Google way faster than I can. Now, do they know how to do it? Not necessarily, but they can find the answer quicker, and they can actually probably come up with a solution quicker than I can. Now, this is the first time this has ever occurred in the generational transfer of leadership, ever.
Yeah.
In the history of the world, I think, where you've got a younger generation that's coming in with more ability to go find the answer, as well as information that they have gained over the course of their life. So this is a new economy that we're living in, and it's creating a really interesting tension.
I'm sure. And if you think about, but it's they have that knowledge, but it's the experience and the wisdom to apply that for implementation, I think, where that development takes place. Okay, you're presenting me with, I've given you a problem to solve.
Yeah.
You've come back to me with, a couple of different ways that we could solve it, and let's process how we're going to do this and why we did this in this way. Let me help you understand the organizational context, or let me help you understand church or the relational dynamics that are in play. I think it's really good insight.
Yeah, and if you watch the organizations, I think that really do empower young leaders, you will find young leaders sitting at the table way more often than they probably should, and in way more environments than they probably should. So one of the ways you can assess the kind of culture that an organization has as it relates to generational transfer is by walking into meetings.